the section in front of the movie theater where the small shops abut that connection point. I think that would be a great compromise. On the site plan, I saw inline retail shown at the front. Why couldn't you put that in that connection point? So going back into the neighborhood, at least you're seeing small shops instead of the side of a big box. But if they're taking that out, I guess that's a moot point. My other big concern is the buffer. It looks like maybe that's been changed on the site plan on Realty Link's website. It shows a 15-foot buffer. We all know how much 15 foot is, and when you're going from a retail development to the paved area of loading docks of big box stores, we all know that's not going to cut it. So I guess I would request to understand if there's been a change to that, if there's been a widening of that, if there's berming, if there's walls. 15 foot is nowhere near what it should be, dividing up a retail section. And I feel bad for the townhouse people that live on those 3 buildings to the south. They're going to be looking right at loading docks. Loading docks can be designed to be completely unidentifiable. It's done all the time. You turn them on their side so that they're not faced out. You put doors on them. I think that's my biggest issue, is if we can really look at Central Boulevard, what we're all going to see when we're out walking our dogs off of Central Boulevard. That is a main thoroughfare through Anson. That is what distinguishes the retail from the residential. And I think driving through there and seeing 3-story high apartments, which by the way, the 3-story high apartment buildings have retail on the first floor. Why are we not combining the 2 sections and making them a little more cohesive? It just seems ironic to me that when the Boulevard at Anson was built, there was retail put on the first floor, which by the way is still largely empty. And on the other side, we're going to back loading docks of other retail up to it. It's just not cohesive. I would also ask to take a close look at the building materials. I would prefer, I don't know exactly what the PUD for Anson says is and isn't acceptable. I would prefer not seeing any like block walls, any precast walls. I think an excellent example in Anson is the Goodwill store. I think when we all heard Goodwill was coming, maybe it wasn't our preferred retail destination. I think there may be some similarities to this. But man, Goodwill stepped up. That building looks nice for a Goodwill store. It's all brick, it's all stone, it's not imitation materials, and I think we deserve that as well. So those are my points. I'm thankful that you're considering tabling this, because then that gives us an opportunity to come back, hopefully, and see any revised plans, because I agree this is a huge, huge project. This is not something that I feel the town should rush through. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. All right, go ahead.
My name's Tim Lawler. I live at 6331 Central Boulevard, and I live in one of the buildings that he just talked about. Our back patios oversee what will be this development. And I'm also a member of the Homeowners Association. I'm an officer for the townhomes in Anson. Our biggest concern is not only the buffer, but the view from the back of our townhomes. So to keep it short, the gentleman before me put it very well. We invested in Anson. We invested in those buildings knowing that something was coming, but we trust and put our trust in this group to make sure that that is done properly and does not affect our property values and the fact that we sit outside on our patio every night.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Mr. McGee, Andrew McGee. Good evening, sir.
Yes, my name is Andrew McGee. I live at 6207 Andrews Way in the neighborhoods at Anson. I'll keep mine brief. It's mainly in regards to, you've already heard twice now, the natural barrier along Central Boulevard. I appreciate that from the meeting, it sounds like they've raised the berm up some, but I'd like to see in their plan all evergreens, not just evergreens in between the, sorry, I'm not a plant guy, so I don't know what the name of trees are that lose their leaves for half the year, but you know, it's very important for the townhomes, the apartments, and where I'm at one of the alleys on Andrews Way that backs down to Schooler. So we can see right through Willie Park as well, and don't really want to stare at the loading docks for half the year. So I'd really like to see the developer somehow, some way put in evergreens for that whole natural barrier.
All right. Thank you, sir. Craig Anderson. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Commission members. Thank you. Craig Anderson, Duke Realty, the General Manager for Anson South. And I thought I'll be brief, but I want to give you some of the facts, because I think on social media there at times aren't facts, or people that are stating what they believe Anson was meant to be, etc. I was here in 2004 when it started. I'm not sure how many other people can say that. And basically with this development, we put under contract in April 2016. It's been a very lengthy process. I typically introduce my customers to Lauren and her team very early on, because I want them to get a feel for who this company is and what they're about. If I start to get a feeling that they're not happy with that use, we won't go that direction. So in September of 16, that happened. We had our first introductory meeting with Lauren and the staff. Dax was there as well. We've continued to have additional meetings, and then January 20th, we kind of brought forth a newer plan with them and had them take a look at it. We had a follow-up meeting on February 13th and had retooled some of those items, and Lauren and her team still had more changes that they wanted to see us make. So Andy, Jeff, and myself went back to the Anson Information Center, and I think by the time we were done with their requested changes and thoughts that we had made 18 changes to the plan at that point. Social media, when they first took off on the plan, it was not a plan, it was a leasing plan. So when you look at the website of RealtyLink back in the day, most retailers would not put that on their website, but they wanted to be very open that as they talk to retailers and are trying to put together their deals, and retailers sometimes like to be with other retailers of similar names, they were very open about that. Not until probably January did any design work take place on their development. At that point, they didn't have enough leasing in place to move forward, and the way these deals happen. Unfortunately, right now we're 0 for 2 on deals. We thought we had an outlet center, that didn't happen. We thought we had a retail power center, and that didn't happen. So I can tell you this is the first group that's put their best foot forward. They've been very easy to deal with, and we're listening to everything staff has. Just a clarification, the Anson site plan from 2004, which has not changed because we don't have the file to make modifications to that, it showed power retail in this area. Nothing's changed. Whether we had that great a vision back in 04 or not, I think our thought was retail would move that direction, that we felt that would be the highest and best use. So that's the direction we went. There was some residential shown on the south side of Central Boulevard, and right now we're out of units. We don't, we'd have to ask for a variance. We don't like to come to Whitestown and ask for variances, so we're not asking for more residential on the south side of Central Boulevard. I was going to read some of the PUD sections, but again, I'll just clarify, they meet the PUD zoning standards and all the guidelines. As far as the architecture, and the young man just talked about Goodwill, there's not another Goodwill store that looks like that. I can pretty much guarantee it. That store looks like that because I enforce the Anson design standards. And those are standards that we have that I've not even provided to Lauren, but they're internal standards that we put together back in the day, which costs a lot of money. But we want first-class development, because if you don't have that, you can't make the next company adhere to it. So it's easy for me when I have clients come into town, they say, what's the building supposed to look like? I just tell them, drive Whitestown, and you'll see what they look like, because those are our properties that we've helped design. There were other comments about we want Hamilton Town Center, we want Clay Terrace. I mean, unfortunately, those projects are not being built nowadays. And there were comments about linear development. I know that came out of the resident meeting. I mean, this building, if you look at the buildings, we have moved the architecture of the height of the buildings, and if you look at the front ends and sides, there are movements in those buildings, which are all requirements of the PUD zoning. We meet all of that. So with that, just won't waste more of your time, but I just wanted you to hear some of the facts. We'll continue to work with staff and make as many changes as possible within possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. All right. Any other public requests to speak? All right. Any questions from the Planning Commission?
You can give the petitioner time for rebuttal
Sure.
if they want it.
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Anderson basically touched on a number of things I was going to offer rebuttal on. In regards to the revised site plan, we do recognize we need to get that to Lauren, but based on the changes, the only changes to the site plan are the central boulevard stopping at the face of the building, and then the park area becoming inclusive within the two buildings with no extension up to Central Boulevard. That basically comprises the changes that we'll be presenting to Lauren. In regards to the buffer yard requirements, the petitioner recognizes the delicate nature with bordering residential areas. So we'll be meeting any buffering requirements and above in order to offer those buffering requirements to the townhomes and the apartments and whatnot to the north. I would like to emphasize that tonight we're here before you for a concept plan and primary plat approval. We certainly recognize that we'll be back before you for secondary plat and detailed development plans at that time as well. And as we indicated, you know, we're obviously going to work with staff to get this plan so that it's a plan that the community can embrace, staff is approving of, and you as a plan commission, you know, can all be in agreement, you know, bringing this project to the community. So with that, I'd respectfully request approval tonight of our concept plan and our primary plat.
Thank you, sir. All right, so I think there's still a lot of resident concerns left to be addressed, and considering that the full plan commission isn't in attendance, we are at quorum, but there's a lot of information that's been talked about tonight, and I'd like to give everyone an opportunity to have further discussion. So on that note, I'll hear a favorable recommendation to table docket items B and C.
I did want to clarify one thing. Should the Plan Commission table the petition tonight, our original intent was to file our concept plan and primary plat and then follow up with our secondary plat and detailed development plan. I just wanted to clarify that should we be tabled, that we could still file our secondary plat and detailed development plan for next month to hear them concurrently.
Yeah, well, we missed the deadline for June, so it'd be on July's docket, actually.
Thank you, sir. So on that note,
Okay, so the reason for tabling it is because, can you repeat the reason for tabling it, Lauren? I mean, what's the reason that staff is recommending it be tabled?
So I felt that since this is a major project, we want to make sure that we address both the public's comments, and I know that we've exceeded the PUD standards, and I'm very grateful for all the amendments that we've done internally with the developer. But since the Wednesday meeting, I felt that for you guys to actually feel comfortable with approving a concept plan that's reflective of what the town wants, then we need to actually have those revisions to consider that. So the plan that you see now is currently outdated, and they don't address the public's concerns or your guys' concerns for that matter.
thank you, Lauren.
And the concern would be that they wouldn't be they wouldn't.
You'd be
Address.
approving this specifically, what you see in
Okay,
front
well,
of you.
I'm just trying to think through the benefits of dragging this on for another month. I guess is what I'm asking.
Well,
I
and
mean,
I also knew
I would
that
invite anyone else to provide any kind of input, but
I also
Guess
knew
not.
that Brian and Corey were unable to attend, so, just for comfort levels, if you wanted to wait until everybody had a chance to ask the appropriate questions, then I'm teeing that up for you, kinda.
I mean, how drastic could the revisions go is my question between, you know, if this were to be approved and not, you know, tabled until later to address additional concerns, how drastic could that be?
I don't think you're gonna see a full revamp of this plan, but I think it would be beneficial for staff, or if you guys wanna send it to review committee, we can do that. But we can sit down with the developer and really see the changes, whether it's actually cutting off that Central Boulevard. How, I know another concern was how traffic was gonna be rerouted, the deliveries, really seeing what the buffer is gonna look like after there's been amendments. I guess there's a change now on social media about what the buffer is gonna look like. So there's just a lot of outstanding items that I think need to be addressed before you guys feel comfortable voting on those.
So I guess my secondary question is,
Maybe rumors that are running around social media too. We need to,
did these come,
Right.
these came in though after the public hearing though, correct?
Correct.
All the additional, so these are additional questions since then that have not been addressed?
since they submitted to me, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because if, I mean, if we've given time and there has been a public hearing on it, I guess I'm a little confused as to what additional questions are outstanding.
Well, this is your first public hearing, your first public hearing.
Correct, yes.
So if you were not there for the resident meeting, then you don't know what those concerns were.
Right, I've
you know.
only what's been presented
Yeah.
to me, correct, okay.
Mr. President, if I may,
Yes, Chief.
how about we move this to a review committee and allow them to do what's necessary? That'll give all the commissioners an opportunity to weigh in. They can send questions or comments to the review committee members, and then have the review committee report back, much like we've done on other projects.
Thank you, Chief. Any other comments from the commission? I couldn't agree more, Chief, that we should send this to a review committee. So I'll hear a motion to send items B and C to a review committee and then return at the next planning commission meeting. But it'll be 2 committee meetings from now, correct?
Well, if we schedule something from now until the June meeting, which I'm assuming we will, the review committee, then at that point, if they feel like they need to meet additionally after one meeting, then they can meet. But I would encourage try to getting it done before the June meeting
Yeah.
itself. There's no need to wait.
I think we can probably make ourselves available to do that.
Okay.
Whoever. So on that note, I'll hear a motion to send that to a review committee.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Agenda items B and C are moved to a review committee. Moving on to agenda item D. Docket PC 1716ZA, Anson PUD zoning amendment for the Interstate Commerce District and Town Center Business District boundary.
Go ahead.
Mr. President, members of the Planning Commission, for the record, again, my name is Brian Toohey. My address is at 50 South Meridian. I'm representing Browning Duke LLC in this petition. With your permission, I think it would make sense if we just present all 3 cases at one time. They all relate to the same building. There's a concept plan, a development plan, and a zoning text amendment, which I'll start off with, if that's okay with Lauren and you folks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So here with me tonight is Letitia Johnson, who will be speaking on this case also, Blaine Paul, Craig Anderson, who's already spoken once, Mark Husfeld, John Cohout, and Doug Greer. Thank you for hearing our case this evening. So we're here tonight seeking a development plan, concept plan, and a text amendment for what's to be known as Building 20 in Anson. And this first slide shows a picture of or a rendering of a proposed approximately 251,000 square foot building, which would be the headquarters of a new business moving here that's involved in the making of retail furnishings and fixtures for restaurants and other retail businesses. So they would be the only occupant of this building at this time. It would be a mixed-use building. It would have some manufacturing, some warehousing, and some office in it. And the next slide will show you where they would propose to put this building. So at the west end of the site is Perryworth Road and Interstate 65, as you can see. It's located just south of Building 19, which is in place. And the parcel is about 16 and a half acres. And that's what's outlined on that slide that shows where it's located. So it's east of I-65 and Perryworth Road, so north of 500 South, and south of 450 South, which is that cross street at the top of the slide. The next slide will show where this building is located. It's in that green area, which I understand is a little hard to see on that slide, but that green area shows that this building straddles the Interstate Commerce District and the Town Center Business District. We thought originally that there was about, out of the 16 acres, there was about 10 acres, 10 plus acres that were in the Town Center Business District. It turns out there's only 3 plus or minus acres in the Town Center Business District. And the reason that's even being brought up is under your Anson PUD, there's a provision that allows those 3 or the different districts in Anson to be modified up to 20%. So you could, as an example, you could take some land from the Town Center Business District and move it into the Interstate Commerce District, or vice versa. This is a very small adjustment of acreage. We're moving about 3 acres from the purple to the light blue. That's about a 1% change in those districts, and that's what we're requesting tonight. So we'd petition to increase the size of the Interstate Commerce District about 3 acres, and we decrease the Town Center Business District by a corresponding amount. The next slide will show that under the Anson ordinance in section 4.14, it says that the size of the districts, that's all the districts, may increase or decrease a maximum of 20% during the preliminary development plan and secondary development plan approval process, which we're here before you tonight. To give you an idea of the limited magnitude of this, the Interstate Commerce District is about 334 acres, and the Town Center Business District is 432. We'd like to pull 3 out of the Town Center Business District and add it to the Interstate Commerce District because this is a use that's permitted in the Interstate Commerce District, and the site is right on the border of those 2 districts. The proposed building is about 251,000 square feet. About 20,000 of that would be the office for the proposed tenant. The areas of the truck court and loading berths are on both sides of the building, as outlined in our petition. And we would propose that this building would hopefully be completed yet this year. It would be about 37 to 42 feet tall. It's a substantial capital investment of several $1 million. And Letitia will come up and explain the next slides. Thank you for hearing our case tonight.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Tish Johnson with Duke Realty. So I have the pleasure of presenting the next slides to you. So I'll try to go through these pretty quickly. So here we have the grading and drainage plan, and what that big blue box shows is our detention basin. And if you follow the drainage arrows, what that shows or conveys is how storm water will route through the site. So as you see, it routes to the east, and then north it comes south, where it will collect at that southeast corner. And there we have a water treatment device that will clean the storm water before it leaves the site. And then it goes to the east, where it will eventually drain into a culvert under I-65. Next slide. Utility plan real quick. So we're anticipating connecting into an 8-inch sanitary sewer. That would be the green line, where we will basically extend to our site, and then the connection points are shown. In addition to that, the water main, we're looking at connecting off of the east side of Anson Boulevard. There's an 8-inch water main there currently. So we will be connecting into there, and then from there we will be bringing a 2-inch domestic line that will that we will connect into our building too on the north side of the building. Just real quick on the fire protection. The fire protection will be connected into the park's private system. We will extend that into our site, where we will loop around the building. I will note that we have been working with the fire department as far as where they want their fire department connection, and also their fire hydrants, and our plan has reflected their changes, and they're shown as on the exhibit. Photometrics, this is just to show you what we're proposing for light fixtures, which is Anson standard, consistent throughout the park. We're proposing the flat lens shoebox style fixtures, which meets the requirements. Landscaping, I'll just point out that our landscaping design was designed to meet the ordinance requirements. The exhibit here shows just a few other screening / buffering. We have the drive-in ramp, and in addition to that, there's the office bump out that will allow some screening and buffering. One comment that I do want to mention is that in our TAC comments, we were asked to provide additional landscaping on the east side of that property line, which we have reflected that in the plans. These are our building elevations. We also have worked with Lauren to ensure that these plans are, or I should say that the building elevations meet her standards, city standards. If you draw your attention to the north and south elevations, their clear story windows are anticipated, which will add some natural light into the building. We have a rendering that's on the next slide, which was actually the picture that was on the initial front page. But this is a view from, or this is how that building will look from I-65. So as Brian stated, this is a single tenant building. So what this does is, in my opinion, it creates that high image entry feature for our single tenant building, for our single tenant. I think that's all I had for the building plans. So if there's no other if you have questions for me, I can answer questions. If not, then Brian's going to finish up the presentation.
Great, thank you.
Thanks again, members of the Plan Commission, for hearing our case. We just have one last slide just to sort of wrap this up. We would respectfully request your recommendation of approval of our development plan, our concept plan, and this text amendment relating to the adjustment of the boundaries. And in summary, the land use district plan, which is Exhibit B to the I-65 PUD ordinance, confirms that the site is almost entirely within the Interstate Commerce District. And for the small amount of acreage that's not in the Interstate Commerce District, Section 4.14 allows for the size of the districts to be increased or decreased, as I mentioned. And Section 5.5 of the I-65 ordinance confirms that the Interstate Commerce District allows the use contemplated in here by this single tenant. We understand that the development, the building meets the development standards of the I-65 ordinance. I understand the technical advisory comments have been addressed. The planning staff recommends approval of this, and we believe the petition meets the criteria for evaluating a zoning map change, and that this is in accord with the land use districting plan and development plans for the I-65 PUD ordinance. With those comments, we answer any questions you might have, and we greatly appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dewey. All right, we'll go ahead and move to the staff report for items D through F.
Staff recommends that the Plan Commission give a favorable recommendation to adopt the amendment to increase the Interstate Commerce District and to reduce the Town Center Business District by approximately 3 acres. Staff also recommends to approve the concept plan and the development plan known as Anson Building 20.
Thank you, Lauren. Are there any public requests to speak either in favor or against these agenda items? Go ahead. If you could just state your names and residence, that'd be great.
Floyd and Cindy Paul. We live at 4921 East, 450 South. And we're here to speak against this. In section 416, the unacquired partial states that it can be in the PUD or revert back to the residential since Duke did not purchase us. So we feel that they have no right to put on us a 200-foot buffer on our property. Yeah.
No problem.
We've talked to Lauren about this also.
Thank you.
We're the property. This is the property that we're changing, and this is us right here.
Okay.
Round shape around Drake's, and then the woods to this one side. Right here, and the 200-foot buffer that they put was around here. But since we're residential and Duke did not purchase us, we feel like that 200-foot buffer should go around here.
Ma'am,
I'm sorry.
if you could try to describe that for the entire audience so that everyone can
Sure.
know what's being presented.
We're the partial property that is actually in the ICD PUD. And that's what, when Craig was here, I was going to tease him because we were here since the beginning also. And Craig actually came to our house. We were one of the few in that area that wanted to sell to Duke. We were put on a option to purchase agreement. And then because of economic reasons, Duke passed on our option to purchase. But they left the 200-foot buffer on our property. And in the section 4 of the PUD 16, it states that the unacquired parcel can revert back to residential. And so the building that they're planning on, I mean, I haven't got a measuring thing, but I got a feeling that it's closer than the 200-foot and then the 400-foot green space past that. And so that's what we were requesting, that you look at that and see what measurements needs to be taken and that kind of thing before you approve of this. Because if we're residential and in the 200-foot buffer, you can't have any building. There's no structure that's supposed to be in that 200-foot buffer. And our house is halfway in it. So you can't have a 200-foot buffer with our house in it unless you destroy our house. So therefore, we are under the thinking of that the 200-foot buffer needs to be beyond our residential property.
Okay.
And the same thing on the other side, the Emery's, I think it is, the 200-foot buffer on their side goes right down the middle of their property also. There's not been a proposal for a building on that side yet,
Okay.
but I just wanted to tell you that that's something that, thank you.
Thank you. So Lord, do you have the history behind that, or I'm a little confused as to,
Why don't we let the petitioner do a rebuttal?
yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Move that slide, please, back to the aerial photograph. That one, I think, works just fine. Thank you. I'm trying to get an answer here, but I think what this deals with is folks, is your home about right there? Okay. And so I think essentially what they're saying is that their property was not purchased, but yet it is within a 200-foot wide greenway buffer. Is that accurate?
But when they did the PUD, they put the 200-foot buffer on our property because they wouldn't purchase it.
Right.
But then when they did not purchase it, the 200-foot buffer's still there.
Right.
And it says that any property that is not acquired reverts back to residential, which I am under the understanding that the 200-foot buffer should be outside of the residential.
Members of the Planning Commission, we think we might have the answer to this. Could we have a 3-minute break?